We're live.
Thank you. Beth, are you ready?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Beth.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first Governance Strategy and City Operations Committee meeting. Thought we'd kind of be as close together as possible so we could see each other, hear each other, chit chat. And I guess we'll start with roll call. So Councilor Fretzer is here, Councilor Armstrong is here, Councilor Dowdell's here, Councilor Kelly's here. I think that's all we have for councilors. And I guess we start things off with public comments. Is there anyone from the public that would like to say anything? For the moment. Okay. So we'll move on to number 2, reports from department representatives and discussion with councilors. And as far as the taxi discussion, hey Chief, would you mind closing those doors for me, please? Thank you. So with the taxi discussion,
this had been initiated because of Gary Buck, owner of City Taxi, approaching the council with a suggestion that we increase rates. And we had said that we would entertain that idea. We got some information from the clerk, Sylvia Parrott, who can report out briefly now just about what she discovered through her research about the matter. And then once we hear from you, Sylvia, we'll figure out a course of action.
Basically, I just looked at the rates when they were last, and Terry had brought that to our, brought it forward, that was 2012. I just did analysis of what it would be today, but I also did provided the council with rates for vehicle operator and amendment fees that if we're going to do one, we may as well look at doing, not that we have to, but
right.
Look at the other charges because they have not been increased since 2013. So it's kind of an equal time span. I did the rates from 1993 using a cost of living calculator, came up with rates. Then I did them in 2013, put them in the same calculator, came up with those rates. One shows a slight difference, the other two not too much, but you know, just something for you to look at, think about, something that I have also thought about. And as just the clerk and not somebody who's going to make the decision. Some of the things that I thought about were, and actually some of the counselors had thought about it as well, is who are the taxi companies serving? Who are the other taxi companies? Maybe we would be better off, you know, it's not for me to say, maybe having 1 or 2 counselors speak with all of the companies to get their input. Some are mom and pop companies, and
yeah,
you know,
so
they're probably fine with the way they are, but I'm not going to speak for anybody because I don't know that.
Exactly.
Sylvia, my understanding too, though, this would be the maximum. This is the maximum rate that can be charged, but it's not the rate that is charged.
Right.
It can be lower. A company can charge lower.
Right. And something I thought about too is so if we increase the rates, then the taxi companies are. You think about Uber, and Terry had provided us those numbers because I don't know those rates. You're closing that window. The further you are from that, the better I think you have more people calling you. That's not, I don't know. I don't know how many calls these taxi companies are getting. I also think about our taxes went up. And some of these people using the taxi services are elderly people who their taxes went up. So now they're living on fixed income, their taxes went up. They're probably gonna go up again this year. That's just the reality of it. And I don't know what that does for them. They, you know, maybe they don't drive, maybe they can't afford a car, maybe they can't afford insurance. Just some things. And I'm sure you've all thought about them as well.
I appreciate you reviewing all the various facets of that.
It's just something that we're gonna have to continue to look into, and, you know, we can talk and decide if we want to put maybe a committee together of, you know, counselors, you know, the mayor, if he's available, and, you know, the taxi companies like you suggested, to try to get a think tank of some sort.
And maybe even put out for people who use the taxi companies. You know, it's not all college kids.
I think, I mean, anybody that uses a taxi, they're gonna say, well, no, I don't wanna pay more. I don't know if that would, I mean,
Well, but, you know, if they haven't been raised, the rates haven't been raised in a while, I'm not saying don't raise them, but I don't know, you might wanna look at the, you know, how high are they, how high do you raise them?
Right. A deeper analysis needs to be conducted before a decision is made.
Yeah. And just, you know, with the committee structure, the public input, we ask for public input.
It's hard to put input in though, I apologize,
Sure.
before I hear what is being said.
So what I think the best route would be take everything in, and then I would, you know, write everything down, compose an email, like send an email to us.
Will there be another public comment after?
We're talking about putting together a group to discuss this with, you know, different taxi company
We're not
owners.
seeing there won't be one that has public discussion
No.
at the end of it.
No. But if you
According to
have,
this agenda, no.
if you have some kind of public comment, like you could say it now if you'd like to, and then.
So I'll wait till Sylvia's finished.
Okay.
No, I'm done.
Okay. Just to touch on a few points that.
Can you step to the mic because there's
Sure.
people watching it?
Sure.
Sorry.
You know, from my perspective, as a owner of Plattsburgh City Taxi, which is a privately owned for-profit corporation. Okay, we are under some regulations from the city of Plattsburgh. As Sylvia mentioned, the last increase was 6 years ago in 2012. Since then, the state of New York has decided to raise the lower income levels wages, and in the last 6 years, those wages have gone from $7.25 an hour to $10.40 an hour this past December. That's a 43% increase. Over the next 3 years, the total of that increase is going to be 72%, which I'm sure most of you are well aware of, okay? It's going to go to $12.50 an hour. That pool of people that I draw from are in those income brackets. We've lost about 7 drivers over the last year to places like Sluters. If I cannot attract drivers to my company because they're going to be able to support their families and make a decent wage, my company is going to look a lot different in the next few years. A lot different. And I believe we supply a quality service to this community, which is needed, apparently, you know, obviously. You know, I have made large investments over the last few years into this company. Over the next 10 years, I've invested $150,000 into technology, which is a new dispatch system, tablet system in our cars, which makes things it makes it easier for my dispatcher to handle calls. It also keeps things more consistent. Pricing, we're not guessing. It's done by mileage. It's done by zones.
And I'm so sorry, it's 3 minutes and you've got a minute left.
Okay.
And then we want you to be a part of this process.
Okay, and I would like to be. Just, again, I guess the big thing is that the maximum fare, like Mr. Ensel said, is set by the city. Other companies can charge less, and they do charge less. And people have that option to take other companies which charge less, to take a bus system that Clinton County offers. Again, we are a for-profit, privately owned corporation, and I think that people should keep that in mind. And I not that I'm not compassionate for these people that use our service that are on fixed incomes, but in order for me to maintain what I have, this is what you know, the $1.50 per call is what we're looking for to be competitive in the work market, in the workplace for our people. All right, thank you.
And
Thanks,
we'll-
Perry.
we have your info, so
Yes.
hopefully you'd be willing to continue the discussion.
And, you know, because
I need to be.
Absolutely, for sure.
I appreciate your patience in bearing with the change in our approach to this issue through the committee structure, but I'm personally committed to help organize that and move into the next phase of exploring this issue within the next week. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. So we'll continue that discussion and form an opportunity to have some community input and to work to find some resolution. Do you want to touch on street drives?
I just wanted to bring it up because I started taking applications today. So there's 2 street drives a month between May and September. I've already received 3 applications, actually 4, but one there's a conflict of date, so they're going to look at the other date. But I just wanted to, I thought if I brought up in a public forum, maybe the application could be filled out quicker. I could get it back on the agenda quicker for you guys to approve or approve.
Those are good options. And then moving on to snow removal,
Yes, the
appeals process.
appeals process has been written out. There are copies actually available outside. I don't think we got any here. Maybe they're part of my packet and I didn't bring mine down. But basically, there are 2 appeals for invoice for snow removal charges, one for factual error and the other for hardship. And there are 2 appeals for the violation, notice of violation of fine. And those fall under the same categories of factual error and hardship. So they're pretty well delineated, as the counselors will see in their packets. There's been a lot of thought put into the criteria.
See the age change
Yeah, we changed the
considerably.
age. But if you look at the criteria for compassion, there's a kind of interdependent condition for some of those. So I'll just read them out, just so my brain isn't working. A person has to write an appeal and offer supporting proof or evidence which shows the following: that the owner is 80 years of age or older, or owner is disabled, infirmed, or physically unable to remove and treat snow, and owner is not living with or have another individual available who's physically able to remove and treat snow, and the owner's annual household income is less than 50% of the median income. I'd just like to state that these criteria were researched and drawn from examples from other municipalities throughout the country.
I'm sorry, Michelle. I just have a question. I'm trying to, for the exception number 3, I guess I'm just trying to place a scenario. It looks like the way it's written, owner is not living with or have another individual available who's physically able to remove or treat snow.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm looking at college housing landlords. They don't live there. How,
No, this would be for a property owner who is not living within their property. Well, I mean, I know you're looking at a technicality and how it might be interpreted.
exactly.
So why don't we consider that, and if you can think of any way to amend that? Dean, do you have any input?
I mean, your I was talking about for a second, but I don't think your example would qualify or hit the other criteria. I don't know.
Well, all the criteria have to?
Yes.
They're
Either
not
have to-
just one or of the?
Yeah, it's,
okay.
well, you're
Okay,
either
I
disabled,
misunderstood
you're
that.
disabled or elderly, and you're not living with someone, and
Okay,
you
okay.
like the financial.
Okay, I misunderstood that, okay.
I think your income would come into play.
Too, yeah,
Something on that.
yeah, okay, I didn't realize. Thank you for clarification.
We'll leave it to council. Thank you.
And then with, as far as agenda items tonight, there's special events with the Irish Festival. This is year 3. And kind of just the same as has happened in years past.
Yeah, we're hoping for some good weather. I'm really excited today because I just got confirmation that Valcour Brewing Company is going to provide us with their craft beer and Irish fare, so that's really exciting. It'll be at the farmer's market in the Jerky Street lot. And we have a really excellent Celtic rock band, so very exciting.
And then this is, the Shamrock Shuffle has been happening for a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, and that's gonna be actually the weekend of St. Patty's Day, so it's gonna be March 17th.
And there are changes to routes and everything is.
Yep, that's all through, the city will provide cones as we usually do, no changes to route, and goes to the foundation of CBPH.
Let me just ask, when you say they're going to provide beer and food, is that strictly, did they have to pay to come in to do that? So they will just operate independently on their own?
It's a really beautiful thing, yes.
It is,
With
it
their
is,
own
it is.
licensure.
With their own license, they'll have to provide that. That's the only thing that they have to do for we require is the proper licensing.
Mhm.
And they're gonna give us a menu and we'll promote that. It's gonna be a really, I think, a win-win for everybody.
Okay, so what they earn is what they take?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And they'll have to hire security, so they have to, they're gonna use a professional security company to monitor the area where the beer is served, and so they have to pay money for that, so they have to try to get that back. So
And the hours, I see the date, but.
it's noon to 5.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? And then, does anyone have any questions, or Sylvia, do you have any information about the Forte payment systems? Is there anything that we should know, or does anyone have any questions for Sylvia?
It's free.
So
That's
that's-
good.
So that's about.
It goes through our BAS system, that's my clerking system, so all my reports go through that. It's only gonna be for debit and credit. There will be a flat fee of $1.95 for users, it's a user fee, that's what Corporate gets. We get ours, they'll run a report for me every day. I'm not gonna be doing the e-checks because the e-checks simply check to make sure there's at least $1 balance. And if they are, they let them process it, which I don't wanna get involved with them having to track all of that if somebody doesn't have the
Right.
full amount.
Sufficient funds.
So up until $80.01, the flat fee is $1.95. After $80.01, the fee then goes up to $1.96. But it's 2.45% of the transaction. 90% of my transactions are 10, 20, birth certificates, marriage licenses, dog licenses. Funeral homes may come in and request 100 copies, or, $100 worth of copies, but, or bingo, that's, their license is like $1,900. So, it's very few people that, and they usually write a check, they're probably not going to do the credit card for that. So, I think it's a win for us, I think it's a win for consumers if that's what they choose to do.
So is this a new system?
Well, we have billing, the BAS system is what I've always used for the clerk system. It's what 98% of, or 95% of all the city, town, village clerks use. It does our reporting for us for the state. And because it's throughout the state, I believe they work in conjunction with Florida, they vet it out, who does a really good process for them of making sure that, things are, checks and balances are done. And because of that, they can offer it to us for free. They'll come in, they'll train us, they'll provide us with a swiping machine. We'll probably have to, give them internet access for that to work, but.
Do you think it'll be a pretty seamless?
I think it'll be, training, yes,
Yeah.
but I think it'll be seamless after that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
If they have any questions for Sylvia? So then, I don't think we have any old business, since this is our first meeting.
Just a quick point of procedure, just with the new committee structure, I think the idea is that in order for these agenda items to get onto the agenda, there should be a simple roll call to push them forward. if one agenda item doesn't make it, then we'll scratch it from the main agenda.
Okay.
The presumption is a lot of them will go through, but if not, then they have to get there first.
So then, is it just is it any counselors who were present? Or
It's the.
Just the committee.
The committee members.
just the committee members, so that's,
Can we provide a slate? Can we just say?
I would think so, yeah.
Okay, I move the slate forward.
I do too.
There, good. All right,
Second.
yeah.
Do we have all in favor? Aye.
Mine.
No worries.
Uh,
I was gonna say, new business, I thought maybe, even though we only have 10 minutes left, if, each department would take a couple minutes to get any updates, any information, anything on the horizon, anything you think that, should be on the radar.
Can we begin?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Cool. I thought I would start and just kind of recap ERI. Things are moving along, and a lot of decisions are going to have to be made over the next few months. So to just kind of to get us to where we are, 10 projects through the DRI were approved through the state. 2 of those are contracted with the Strand in the state, so they're outside of what the city is doing, and 2 are contracted with the Norwegian Co-op and the state, so those are projects that we can assist with, but they're between those agencies. The city has 6 projects that are moving forward, and I just kind of wanted to give you a quick where we're at and what is coming. So we have one project is actually 2 combined. The riverfront access and the streetscape projects were combined into one contract. That contract is being run by the Department of State, so they are overseeing the work plans and the things that are happening with those 2 projects. Currently, we are out with an RFP for firms, design firms. We have been going on walkthroughs with interested firms. Yesterday we had 2, today we had 5, tomorrow I believe we have 6. We've had a pretty big response of people interested in the projects. We're in the process of creating a project advisory committee to help review the responses to the RFPs and make recommendations moving forward. And throughout the process, once we have the firm in place as part of their project, we've got a lot of scheduled throughout the design timeline, a lot of public input. There'll be surveys and public forums and walkability surveys, and so we're really trying to get a handle on that to make sure that we understand the walkability and the flow of the city and how people get around. And we're looking at the main corridor, really, the entire DRI area is being looked at, but if you look at the arts corridor, sort of West Telecom Park, Durkee Street, Bridge Street, down to the waterfront, it's really, a main sort of circulation that we're trying to have them take a look at. So that is in process and moving along, so that the council should see recommendations on firms soon, and the project will move from there. The downtown grant program, that is the fund that is currently open to individuals who apply for current buildings to renovate apartments or facades or combinations of those things. We ended up with 31 applications received, essentially requesting more than double what the funding available is. We have a project advisory committee.
It's $1 million, right?
The project is $1 million, and we have about 2.4 million in requests. The project advisory committee is currently reviewing those applications and scoring them to make sure that they meet the criteria established as part of the grant program, and then those scores and projects will come forward to the council to then look through and make the final decisions for consideration and approval. And then Durkee Street and Dock Street, separate projects, both the larger development projects. Currently, we're developing the RFPs. We have some funding in there for capacity building to help usher the process through. That's what we're going to be the first step in each of those projects. The RFPs will go out. They're being reviewed internally, making sure that they say what they need to say as far as making sure that the legal language is in there. Those recommendations will then come to the council, but those initial are not to developers. They're to the folks who are going to help us go out and see what's available to help us develop the requests for interest. Project advisory council committees will be created for both of those, and these committees are made up of community members and from SUNY and downtown and town, and as they have been throughout the process.
The composition of all the project advisory.
Yes, it's various people with various expertise in different in the areas. And again, those two projects public input will be scheduled throughout those process. And then the final project, marketing, branding, signage, we have our advisory committee formed. RFP is being reviewed by the committee and by legal counsel. And that is really to like a cohesive design. Where's our waterfront, branding waterfront in different districts throughout the city, so that way we have a cohesive message and a cohesive brand for the city. And Sandra's head of that project as we move forward. So those are the 6. And again, the riverfront access and streetscape are combined. So technically, we'll have 5 projects, 6 total things that will be occurring through the DRI, and that's where we are with each of them. A lot of the things that we're doing, and to clarify, the DRI is meant to be a launching point into more funding, different funding to leverage into other things. Parking surveys that are being done, or anticipation of the changes that are coming. Dock Street and Restore New York, and so there are a lot of other types of funding out there. Affordable housing funding, and the DRI is leveraged to be able to access those funding. DRI communities get priority scoring in some of those applications. So that's where we are with everything.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just a question. The first set of RFPs you discussed, Paul, away from the Durkee and Dock Street, what were those again? You were saying you were walking people
the
through?
riverfront access and streetscape. We were taking firms on walkthroughs that are interested to see the streets that we want to streetscape, and the riverfront, so that they can actually visualize before they return a response. So firms that are interested, we're starting at City Hall and walking down Margaret Street and through the West Telecom Park and taking them down the main thoroughfare.
So what type of firm are we talking? Is it like a
Design firms,
Design?
architectural,
landscaping, or is
landscape,
that?
architectural, yep.
Okay. And there's how many interested?
How many total did we get?
So in terms of ones that are attending the walkthroughs, it's scheduled two yesterday, 5 today, and 6 tomorrow. But
Okay.
that's just the ones that are attending the walkthroughs. There's also others that haven't been able to make it here on time who.
And it wasn't a requirement that anybody came
Yes.
to the walkthrough, we were just providing
Okay.
it so that some firms who are familiar with the city
Probably
don't
would.
necessarily need to come and walk
Right.
the streets, but those that might not be, so they can actually take a visual before they.
We've been contacted by 20 overall with questions or confirmed attendance of the walkthroughs.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Paul?
Will there be a write-up, updates like we've been getting?
Yes, I have
Okay.
them, and we'll share them as we go. So we
Okay.
should have everything updated from June and July when these things start to kick off.
Mhm.
And also,
Yes, sorry, all the documents, the website has been completely updated, so community development, DRI, everything from the beginning, all the documents that led up to the DRI that went into the strategic investment plan is there, and then everything that's happening is broken out by project, so you can click on the project and see where everything's at.
Okay.
So anytime you want to see it, we're keeping that up to date. Brian and Joel and Sandra updated everything, so it's current.
So I guess speaking specifically within the scope of the website, operationally, there's a lot of site versus what, 2 years or so, it's been working pretty well. We've been asked to deal a little bit with some stale content, which within a decentralized admin model, if we are a little hard to do. But,
Stale content?
yeah, just there's some things that have been there for a little while that, it's multi-admin, so there's 20, 30 people that can add and delete things from the site, not to mention all the community calendars. We're cleaning that up a little bit. The website steering committee does meet this Tuesday, so if there's any specific concerns that you have, please let me know before then, we can address them. But beyond that, these guys, Paul said me, but it's really those two that are adding a ton of content for DRI, all the RFPs, making that work, so they've done a great job.
Thank you.
And the cost attached to this website, is it?
Well, with
where
the
we
original
go?
project, I don't know if you remember when we did it, it was
Mhm.
$51,000 or so for the project, if I recall. And we broke that up into a payment structure that we're still finishing the payments on. But
Okay.
I think this is the last one this year, maybe.
So there's
Last one, or maybe that was maybe it's next year, I'm not quite sure. I don't remember
Any
where we're at.
additional costs that'll be attached to that?
There's a maintenance cost every year that includes hosting, a license for the software, upgrades, of course, they're in a tier 2 data center, so all the security. And it's not, you gotta understand too, it's not just the website. There's all these different modules, the agenda tracking that can be, the big belt, there's the RFP modules. There's even a full work order system that we don't take advantage of, but it's all there. But yeah, so then that going on, it will use about $7,000 a year once we enter that phase.
And that comes out of which budget?
Generally, it's IT.
Do you have a budget?
Not yet, but we're working on that.
And all these things were considered back when we reviewed all the RFPs that were submitted for the website.
Yes.
And we chose them because they were the most comprehensive as far as what they would offer, and I think cost was also a factor.
Yeah, they were, I think, actually in the bottom half as far as cost goes.
Any other questions?
So when you say you're working on a budget, are you going to establish your own budget again?
I don't know, I wouldn't say we're going to establish our own budget, but we're working on ways to make sure that that's funded.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Sylvia, do you have anything to wrap up with?
No, I'm administrative, so there's not a lot going on. Although Ryan's been very helpful, I'm working on putting on the website, it's not a page.
Yeah, it's a page for your local laws.
So that people can just go in local laws and they're gonna be there. So I'm gonna start with the most recent, obviously, and I'm probably gonna put the local law number, and if I can put like a little, something that has to do with snow removal, tax levy, just a little blurb. So people have access to, it'll say pending, because I don't get the letters back from the state right away, but, if I look on the website for the state and see that it's been filed, generally it's filed, but I usually like to wait until I actually get the letter back from the state.
We haven't gotten it back for snow removal yet.
No, I haven't, but I actually on the website, and it says it was filed.
Okay.
But they are delayed, because I still haven't gotten it back for, the last local law of 2017. And when I called the state, because generally I get it back within, 10 or 15 days, they're delayed, their backlog, so they said it could be a while, so, I'm gonna count on going on the website,
Okay.
I submit it within 10 days, 15 days to see if it's stamped there, and then but until then, it'll say something that's or something. But that's in the works, if that won't be
That's
available.
great.
I'm just working.
It'd be nice for people to be able to have a one-stop shop to know what's going
Well,
on.
and part of the problem is it's not my person code and how they.
Pretty sure.
It's a nice way to.
Pretty sure.
These new laws, so people can see them, code and something a little bit.
Yeah, that's great. That's appreciated.
Does anybody have any other? Well, then I guess I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, and thank you guys so much, and see you in a few weeks.
You have a phone call.
I did, yes.
Hey, like the stock market, they,
Thanks, Jack. All of a sudden I realized,
I saw, I was like, I know someone's gonna come back. I look familiar, I just couldn't remember who it was.
and yes, my hands were clean.
I love it.
You reworked the press release, I did one too.
It's all good.
Put the two together by tomorrow.
Oh, I thought that was, mine's
Mine isn't as legalistic as yours.
Yes.
But yours
all right, thank you.
Because I was writing like, but I want to double check this.
I did.
Have a sheet ready to put on
It's right there.
projectors and all of that. Oh, yeah. And I can tell
We do the work session. What's there to do in work? Is there anything to do in work session?
The river trail is maybe coming, so
Okay.
we could do a lot of that.
Very good idea.
The city
here, ready to
Club
go?
Road.
Myself, Josh.
Is that Club Road?
There's a US, or is it just considered US?
Needs to be taken care of before we go to work session.
Or is it just the one
I
side?
don't know, it's a mess. I know it's the brownstone side.
Y'all ready to go for work session? Let's call this work session to order for the Common Council tonight. This is an opportunity for us to have a little bit of an extended conversation on any issues on the agenda that you'd like to pull out.
Well, I think it's been suggested, Mike and Michelle, that we have a conversation about the motion that was tabled last week, the SHPO grant, the reauthorization of the SHPO grant. So maybe this is a good time for us to discuss it. And John, I would ask you to come up and talk about exactly what the issue is so as to clarify the points. In particular, my concern is that everyone understand, including me, what the ramifications are for reauthorizing the grant. What we have discovered is now the city's responsibility on that, and any possibilities of mitigation of the city's responsibilities on that. And then finally, are you writing this down? What are the consequences either way of not just reauthorizing the SHPO grant, but of city either chipping in that $407,000 or not?
Give you the Cliff Notes version. Adam's done most of the work and it's got way more detail than you probably want to get into. So, yeah, he spent a lot of time dumbing it down for me, so I got it in bullet points. So I'll tell you a quick version, and then if you have in-depth questions, I may lean on him a little bit. But bottom line is, right now, the expected cost of the project through end of Saranac River Trail Phase 2 is $3.167 million, so almost $3.2 million. That's design costs, engineering, it's right-of-way acquisitions, it's almost $200,000 for the demolition of the old Saranac Street Bridge, and it's based on a construction estimate of a little over $2.6 million. So that comes out to almost $3.2 million. The amount of secured Department of Transportation funding is 1.6. So there's like a $1.5 million shortfall, plus or minus. But there's also an expectation or anticipated $500,000 from SHPO, which was to take this Saranac River Street Bridge from rehabilitation into replacement. And that was done by adding a STEM component, science, technology, engineering, and math component to that. So, almost a $3.2 million project, minus the $2.1 million in secured DOT and anticipated SHPO funding, leaves us with a little over $1 million as a local share. Okay? The latest capital project resolution that I've seen is from August of 2016. It shows an anticipated local share of $574,000. Which means, and I believe, Rich, that money's already been borrowed?
Yep.
And the bond payment for that is already built into the 2018 tax rate. Okay. So that money's borrowed, and it's fortunately already built into your expense line items in the tax rate. So what you're looking at is another $470,000 potentially that you need to come up with for additional city local share.
470 or 425?
470.
About 470. Now, I'm just, to make it simple, and kind of talking rough numbers here. Now, there is a risk element with that, which is if the construction bid costs and actual costs come in higher than this estimate's built on, that $470,000 could become more. But in theory, it could go the other way, which we don't see that often, but it can. Basically what we're confronted with is we can come up with another $470,000 and based on estimates get us through the end of Saranac River Trail Phase 2, or we can pull the plug on the project and basically eat $550,000 plus or minus. It's already been spent. Now, a couple other things to consider. One is if we borrow the force of $170,000, we get through Saranac River Trail Phase 2. There's a third phase that's coming along with this. That's within a DRI, and potentially the DRI could be used as the local share of Phase 3, which means if you come up with $470,000 for Phase 2, you get Phase 2, but you can also now get Phase 3 without additional city local share.
Have you confirmed that with certainty?
With the,
DOT, they're checking into
yeah. DOT's initial response was yes, and they're confirming that.
And can we have the signatures of their firstborn in blood?
Yeah. That gets us into the risk part. So
in other words, John, what you're saying is, it basically comes down to we borrowing another $470,000 or walk away having put in $550,000 with nothing to show for it.
right, correct. And now there's other considerations. If we walk away, what does that mean for future funds from DOT or other state agencies? And it's hard to say. But when it comes to these types of programs, if we get in the habit of giving money back or saying we're going to do the project and not doing it, common sense tells me we're going to be less likely to get more money. We're hoping to get a fair amount of money for the sidewalk program. What's that one called now?
PSAP, Pedestrian Safety Action Plans.
And that could be up to how much?
Minimum of $250,000, maximum of $5 million, 100% DOT funding to improve pedestrian safety around the city.
Which could include a number of the ADA non-compliant sidewalks that we now have in our capital plan for.
What's the title of it again?
PSAP, Pedestrian Safety Action Plan. Wholesale replacement sidewalks may not be allowed, but the ramps and embedded detectable warning units DOT is confirming and potentially roads on there. But we could jeopardize that funding if
Let me just ask you a somewhat related question. Do we still have a policy of homeowners who wish to have their sidewalks done off schedule, paying for half of that sidewalk? Okay.
In the capital plan for 2020, Cornelia Street's shown to the tune of maybe $3 million worth of improvements. We're trying to get DOT funding to do the majority of that. So if we walk away or give back this grant, it could jeopardize something like that in theory.
To my other question, is there any possibility of adjusting the design of Phase 2?
The scope?
Yes.
Okay. Not that we can see that would make an appreciable change. There's a few little things, and I can give you a spreadsheet that shows it. Right now in Phase 2, the charging stations are in Phase 2. So if we relocate the charging stations from one parking lot to another, we might save $16,000 there because it's coming into DRI. The Phase 2 also includes design of Pine Street upgrades. So there's $23,000 for that we can use CHIPS funding for. But the big one, two big ones. One is the $3.2 million estimate includes over $300,000 in anticipated construction services from the engineers, inspections and all those kinds of things. We're looking for ways in-house between Adam, me, Public Works, and other technical staff we have to see if we can use those folks or train those folks to do some or all of the work. We could use maybe some of our water guys from the water plant or DPW to do the water line inspections, sewer plant guys to do the sewer line inspections, and maybe some other components of the job. So,
what kind of impact would that have financially?
cost-wise, if we saved half of the anticipated cost, that would be a $150,000 reduction. Okay, so now that's
That's money.
Yep. Okay, so that's a good money there. And then right now there's a $370,000 contingency built into construction.
Right.
So let's say we save half of that. That's another 186. And share those. This kind of outlines maybe how the local share could get reduced. Adam and I just pounded this out about 15 minutes ago, so I hope the numbers add up. the first highlighted row shows the additional city share, 470,000, which we're expecting. If you go below that, if we save 150,000 on supplemental agreement 3 by reducing the construction inspection in half by using in-house services, that would save us 150 grand. We pull out the Pine Street, 23,000, that we can fund with CHIPS, move the charging stations into DRI and save 16 grand. And then if we don't incur half of the contingency, now the additional share could come down to 94 grand. Looks great. Dangled a nice little carrot in front of you. Don't want to set us all up for failure, though, okay? If the construction costs come in higher than anticipated, though, we're on the hook for that. Okay, so that's something Adam and I have been tossing around. What's our confidence level in the construction estimates? As far as we know, they're okay. It does have this $370,000 contingency built into it, but a large component of the project are these 2 bridges. Those are, we're told those are prefabricated bridges, so the likelihood of running into cost overruns or change orders, I would suspect are going to be lower than if you're building something in the field. Can't guarantee it, but, so those kind of things we're tossing around. It's hard to quantify and put a number on, but it can go either way. This local share is a tough one.
Are there any variables that we can have oversight in terms of the use of those contingency funds for cost overruns? Like basically where we are watching to make sure that certain mistakes are not made, or people are just spending money willy-nilly because, hey, they ponied up $470,000.
Oh, yeah, and you know, that, our construction inspector typically does those things. So usually on a project like this, the engineering firm, so plastic construction inspector, because they're on the hook for the final product, certifying it and warranting it and all that kind of stuff. So from that perspective, yeah, that kind of oversight is there. If we slide into using our staff, you know, we're going to have to make a judgment call at that time. How good do we think we can train our staff to be?
Yeah.
You know, definitely they're on our side, but really to a large extent, so is the engineer's inspector, but they've also got some loyalties to the engineer, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect that to be a big player in the cost. Where we're going to have a lot more information, unfortunately, is when we get the bids back. Bids come back, we're going to know. Were the bids more than this estimate said? Are they less? If they're less, and that contingency is available, knock on wood, we're in really good shape then. Because now we're talking about overruns or change orders based on unforeseen circumstances or things within our control, like changing the scope as we go.
But how much are we borrowing up front? If we have possibilities of savings, are we
And we cash flow.
dollars. Capital. Where about 4 miles. You got to spend your money. $470,000. just today, and that the system defines some job cuts. Creative fund. But incredible to read. The site also.
easy. Was 26 neighborhoods. Main Plattsburgh submission recommendation. It's a community engagement process. Yeah. Program. At City Hall, the 10 DR projects.
facade.
So, I just want to say that although we cannot predict the outcomes and the variables that could impact all of that, I right now have pretty high confidence in people on the infrastructure committee. Been working with them for 4 years now, and if anybody can do it, they can.
Finance and budget, Councilor Cotton?
Well, our next scheduled meeting is a couple of weeks away, but by that time, I hope to have the 2018 or 2017 final budget numbers and have that plugged into our 5-year plan so that we prepare for the annual update of that 5-year plan in May. And I would invite my fellow councilors to come up with any outliers or unusual expenses that you might see as a result of your own committee work that you can advise us of in advance. We're finding that it is a really good thing to anticipate spending in advance and prepare for it and budget for it up front. That worked out really well for us in 2017, and I'd like to continue that practice going forward. Thank you.
Public safety, Councilor Valder?
We had our first meeting last Thursday on the 25th. At that time, the fire chief, police chief, and building inspector participated in a meeting. The topic started with budget concerns, and then we went in the direction of the recent incidents in the city of Plattsburgh, the fires, and the Underwood Avenue situation. We will meet again every fourth Tuesday, or Thursday. Not Tuesday, but Thursday. We'll make it Thursday. All right.
I should add, your code or building inspector is incredibly busy with this Underwood issue on a daily basis. Weekends, if he's not here right now, he's probably down at the forum, the workshops, trying to help out residents getting back into the places that are reoccupied. So thank you for that. Public library, Councilor Armstrong?
Yeah, the meeting for this last month was canceled, and will not meet again until the last week in February, but I hope to meet with director before the update.
And municipal lighting board president, Councilor Matson?
We will have a meeting next Thursday of the board immediately guess I'm just anxious. Next 2 weeks, on the 15th, to our first board meeting of the year, immediately following our regular council meeting.
I appreciate your enthusiasm.
So be resolved, the reports as listed are hereby ordered received, and any written reports are placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office. Moved by Councilor Armstrong, and seconded by Councilor Fetzer. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolved that the bills lodged by the Common Council for the week ending February 2nd, 2018, in the amount of $280,787.55 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Renzel, seconded by Councilor Kelly. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. This is the opportunity for any individuals to come, please address the council on issues on the agenda tonight. There will be another public comment period at the end of the meeting as well. So this is agenda item at this time.
I guess that had several passages here. One is President of Friends of the Saranac River Trail, and I'm going to address that topic that's on the agenda, but I'd like to say something that I think has not been adequately brought up. Several people mentioned that the possibility of returning or turning down a grant, it can affect further grants from those agencies. I think I heard people say that might put further grants from those agencies in jeopardy. I've spent the last year working on a project, actually a book about nonprofit risk, and I spent a lot of time with people in the nonprofit world who are interested in risk, which is everything. And the people who actually provide funding through private philanthropies, public agencies, and so forth, their jobs are on the line for the grants that they recommend. And they talk amongst themselves. Fortunately, because if you're writing a book about it, then you talk to one, you can follow on to other people. And it's a very relatively small group of people who do this fund. So I just like to suggest that if grants, and I'm thinking of specific, if grants are turned down, and I've seen it happen in some places, a municipality nowhere near here, 3 times grants were returned. And the logic from the governing board of that municipality was, well, we haven't spent the money yet. So it's not the case here. If they hadn't spent the money yet, there's no problem turning the grant back. Well, the problem is that someone at the funder, public or private, whatever, stood up and says, we've reviewed this grant application. We believe that the applicant can do it. It's worth doing it. And I, funder employee, put my reputation on the line, recommend that grant. Now, when grants are turned back, it's not just that the overall funder, the DOT or whatever, may say we don't want to deal with that entity. It's that the word gets out that the entity that turned back the grant, turned it down, having applied for it, and pursuing the process, can be viewed as an unreliable partner. And it's not just that particular funding agency that may look askance at further grants. It's other agencies. Word, as they say, on the street gets out. Don't deal with that entity because with the applicant, because you will do your best, do your due diligence, do your job, say, is the project worth doing? Can the applicant do it? Once you've done your work, the rug will be pulled out from underneath. So in looking at the difficulties of turning back grants, and it does happen, when you look at that, consider the fact that you have a lot of other things going on now with the same agencies, other agencies, including private funders of various sorts and investors. And they are looking at the reliability of this city to come up with projects that can be done and are done. And that once they are done, yes, they improve the city, they do wonderful things for us, but they also, and this is how, this is life, they also reflect positively on the agencies and entities and philanthropies and whatever, investors, reflect positively on those people that have been part of this project, and they will continue. So if I'm trying to, without using the language that I typically use in discussing serious issues like this, I'm trying to not use any four-letter words, but I would like to scare the
Four-letter word.
out of you, because I've been in some of these meetings, and I've been at some of the social gatherings where people have said, don't touch that entity. So, that's my contribution.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you for sticking to the 5 minutes.
I can go on longer.
Any other individuals like to come address the council on issues on the agenda tonight?
I'm glad that Jesse stood up because I have a grave concern. I've been in the city of Plattsburgh for almost 60 years. I've lived in other cities in between. And my big concern is that the city of Plattsburgh and the councilors and the residents, our problem is we're so short-sighted. We need to really look at what are we trying to do? Why is the town of Plattsburgh? Why is Peru? Why are all the surrounding communities growing at leaps and bounds? And we're not. I just spoke to another developer and another business person, and they both chose to develop in the town of Plattsburgh. Why is that? I'll tell you from their words alone. Because the city of Plattsburgh, they feel, is going nowhere. And in fact, they feel it's going down. And the mayor and the councilors and the residents want to see us not only survive, but thrive and grow. We have all the characteristics of what every downtown revitalization community and city strive for and hope for. We have a waterfront that needs to be more vibrant. It's not. We have a downtown corridor that could include walking, shops, restaurants, include and attract people to come and live in the downtown corridor. I live on Couch Street. I live next to a burned building that after 6 years still is there. Why did 220 Margaret Street and 72 Brinkerhoff get demolished within 2 weeks of a tragic fire? I'll tell you why. Because we had responsible property owners. Tom Lattenville, who still owns 15 Couch Street, recently got denied to build a multifamily or even a duplex to house more students than he housed illegally prior, and it still sits. It's time for the city to act and take that over so we can generate income. He's not paying taxes, he hasn't for 6 years, and he hasn't paid the $25,000 fine. I asked that the city councilors work on the zoning code 6 years ago to tighten up that loophole. But let's get back to the downtown revitalization and the reason why I'm really here. And that's because I'm asking.
The DRI is not on the agenda, so you'll have to wait till later if you could.
But I'm asking, when we have projects that we get funding for, we have to follow through. We won't exist because, as Jesse said, nobody's going to be willing to take the risk to invest in us. How will it look if we don't follow through? We need to have the backbone to follow through. You've had the backbone to cut budget and positions. We need to find the resources to work together with residents. And if it means raising our taxes a little bit, so in the end we have a better quality of life. Several people have invested as homeowners in the downtown corridor, on Court Street, on Brinkerhoff, on Couch, and they have all said to me, why do I want to live here? because it's walking distance near the library, near the YMCA, near the parks, near the water. These gems aren't being utilized. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other individuals like to address the council on issues on the agenda tonight?
I just had a couple things. I had a question, so maybe we'll come up here and get to that point. Are the two events that are going to be going on in March, are they budgeted or paid for in some other way by sponsorship or whatever? That's my question on B and C. And, excuse me, as far as the sidewalk removal, the law, are we going to be able to get a report for the cost of enforcement, the police checking the sidewalks, the DPW clearing snow, wages, benefits, the hours that's spent on this by the superintendent, the code enforcement officer, processing appeals? It'd be nice to know what this is actually going to cost us compared to maybe buying some equipment that we could use to clear the sidewalks. And maybe in the future we should think about not letting other developments be made without sidewalks be putting in, because if we really care about kids and the elderly and the infirm, how come we don't have sidewalks in all of our neighborhoods? Are we trying to keep certain people out? And on the Saranac Street project, I agree with Councilor Kelly that if we're going to borrow this money, you have to come up with cuts to pay for it. We can't do this any longer. We're broke. We're sick of paying more taxes. I don't agree with the last speaker that we're willing to pay more taxes. I'm not willing to pay more taxes. If somebody wants to volunteer to pay more because they have extra money, throw it in the pot, but I'm not. Thank you.
Any other individuals like to come address the council anything on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, continue.
Motion to remove 7A. Oh, sorry.
I don't like to be a complainer or anything, but, you know, a couple of things which she mentioned, which I would mention too, you know, if the city, and it's probably not specifically the people sitting here right now, but if the city really cared about children walking in the streets or whatever, they wouldn't have allowed so many developments without sidewalks. I'm not trying to blame anybody here, that's been done in the past for quite a bit, but it still goes. And I also did a little bit of walk around. I did not go to every corner lot in the city, but I know somebody at the last meeting mentioned that there's only commercial lots that are over 75 feet, but if you're unfortunate enough to have a corner lot, your lot is over 75 feet. I did not see a single one that was less than that. So these people would pay extra. I don't really want to go on and on about the sidewalks, but I do want to mention about the bridge on, I don't want to weigh in on whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, but I will say this about having invested quite a bit in the past. When you make an unwise decision, no matter how much money you have in there, it's a good idea to walk away. You have to decide, do you have the money to actually do this? And it's nothing to walk away from $500,000 if it's going to cost you another $500,000 to finish up. It's throwing good money after bad. I'm not saying it was a good idea or bad idea, but I would want the city to make sure that they have the money to proceed with this. As Councilor Kelly said, before you jump on this and say, well, we've made some money decisions in the past, so we don't want to lose that. Well, I got news for you. You go to a casino, I've talked to a lot of people there that, well, you know, that machine is ready to hit. Well, I've got $500 in there. I don't want to lose it. I want to keep playing. Well, guess what? They leave another $500 on the table. I just want you people to really carefully consider that. Maybe take some time to mull over it. I don't remember any construction project I've ever seen that didn't go over budget. Maybe this would be the first, but you know, you have to keep that in mind as to where you're headed with this. It's going to cause the city to have to draw back in other areas. And, you know, if the city wants to do that, and I want to reiterate what my wife said is, I don't wanna pay more taxes. The real reason people don't come here to locate is because the taxes are so high. The electric rates are just a wash for the taxes. I mean, I did the math before I came here, and that's it. It's a wash. It's not a better place to do business in any way with these high taxes. And that's the thing we really need to work on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Nancy Allen, 1 Oliver Court. Sidewalks again, I hate to beat a dead horse here, but I think it's important to look at the sidewalks from two different aspects, business and residential. If you own a business, snow removal is the cost of doing business. It's a deductible expense. And it's not the same for a residential property owner, so I treat both the same. Snow removal is a problem in Plattsburgh, and it always has been, and at the rate we're going, it probably always will be. The threats of fines, fees, and the unreasonable cost that has been voted on for city intervention, it really doesn't help with the issue. It's that, let's just scare people into doing the right thing. Let's make some money while we're at it. And if somebody says the actual costs that were provided are what it costs to remove snow, it is no wonder the city is in the financial situation it is in. My little tiny corner lot, 1 Oliver Court, is one of the smallest lots in the city. It would have cost $230 last year. Now it's up to $300 plus a fine, okay? That's totally unreasonable. One man, one snow blower, shouldn't take more than a half an hour at the very most. My sidewalks are cleared, but what if I miss my window at 24 hours? I really do worry about that. And I don't like to worry. I don't like to be in fear. Did you ever try and find a person to do your sidewalks? I did. I tried, and it was almost impossible. Fortunately, my neighbors help me now, but he travels. Things get in the way. What if he gets sick? My snow removal companies, they want big contracts, and I don't blame them. I would too. Nobody wants to just come out and do a sidewalk. If they find one, are they going to be reliable? And are they going to be cost effective? But if the city really wants to help, instead of just threatening people with outlandish fees, here are some suggestions for you, okay? Make a list, maybe you can get an entry, make a list of snow removal companies that will actually come and clear sidewalks. And what's their cost, okay? Post it on your website. Throw out disclaimers, okay? I'm sure you want to cover yourselves, cover the city. How about working with community service work? How about, this was brought up before, free salt and sand from Public Works. Have you ever tried to get salt after an ice storm? Everybody's sold out, okay? All right, maybe we can't do it for free, but how about it cost? Maybe it's too much work for Public Works. But how about the work for the taxpayer? Here, I think, is the very best idea. How about the city doing the cleaning for a reasonable fee, like garbage removal? I think it's a great idea. I'd do that. If the city did it at a reasonable fee, good. They do my garbage, they can do my sidewalks too, be very happy to. But I don't think the city wants the liability. And it seems the city doesn't really care too much about the taxpayers, just the end result. But we're little people and we're expected to act like professional snow removal people. You know, I feel my property, because it's right next to a city sidewalk, should be appraised less than similar properties with no walks. That's due because of all the added work on my part, the punitive cost if it doesn't get done in a timely fashion, and don't forget the liability. Liability is an issue that's almost been forgotten and shouldn't be. Now it's with the taxpayers, and it's a very important thing. A lot of property owners don't even think about this. So if we can have some help from the city, maybe we can work together on this. It doesn't seem like there's been a lot of work together, as opposed to let's just increase the cost from last year to this year. Let's throw in a fee. Let's throw in a fine. You know, it's not real friendly. It's not a nice approach. Thank you.
Thank you.
And to remind everybody that our policy is if you speak on one issue, we ask for one representative to come up, and if you have small, short points to add to that representative's comments, please feel free to make those, but we do ask for one representative to talk. Thanks for your comments. I've taken note of them, see what we can do. Any other issues that you'd like to raise for the council on items on the agenda tonight? Let's continue on.
Motion to remove 7A from the table.
So moved.
Councilor Casper, second by Councilor Armstrong. The roll call to remove.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensign?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves accepting funds for EPF grant for the City of Plattsburgh Saranac Street Bridge Project.
I'd like to make a motion to waive the reading and move the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Kretzer, second by Counselor Casper. Discussion. Discussion on the motion, so.
Yeah, just, I think we had a thorough and productive discussion during the work session. I appreciated everyone's input. I appreciate the public input, and I feel ready to vote.
Any further discussion?
I just question how much more information will we get if we don't know? What else is out there?
So you're suggesting that we perhaps table it again?
John, is there any more information that you can think of in the next week that would be, help us to make a decision?
As far as this decision goes, not that I'm aware of, but I did want to make a point of clarification. You brought up something very important before. How many times are we going to come back and ask for more money? It's not something we want to be doing. But if there is a yes vote, which means we are going to proceed to the next step of the project, we will be coming back with a supplemental agreement 3 request, not for $360,000, but for about $33,000. We won't change the numbers that were discussed tonight about the local share and everything, but I don't want to come back next week and say, oh yeah, by the way, here's another $33,000 and have to say, hey, said you didn't think you were coming back for anymore. That's already something that's anticipated and built into what we discussed, so.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
That worked
Point to
down
clarify.
If I could ask a few more questions before we proceed. The $550,000 that we're talking that has been paid in, back in April 2016, we had a general fund cost of $374,000. Is that part of the 550?
As far as the spending, whatever funding we get plus the general fund share, that covers the spending that goes on. So 550 is the total that's been spent on the project so far. It's shared between what funding we've gotten and what funding the city's committed. Now the 374,000 was increased to 574,000. So this project has always had a city share.
Yes.
Saranac River Trail Phase 2.
Yes.
And it was started at 374, increased to 574. Plus there's a second design project for 26,000. Those two amounts amounting to 600,000 have been borrowed and are going to be spent as the project proceeds.
So we did know of the cost from the general fund, but we didn't know of this additional cost?
Well, it's my understanding and my memory, and it might not serve me as well as it used to, but I kind of remember that the original Phase 2 didn't include all the bridge work that was being discussed. The $470,000 additional cost is coming from the scope increasing of the project for the bridges and the bridge work. That's my recollection. I could be wrong.
As I recall, the original plan was to save the existing bridge. And then as that work began, they discovered that it was in way worse shape than they thought. And that bridge had to be, the older bridge had to be torn down.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than, repair and renovation, it became a matter of replacement. Does that have anything to do with this increased cost?
I thought the SHPO funding was supposed to pay for the replacement bridge.
It's not entirely clear, but it is clear that some of that move from rehabilitation of the Saranac Street Bridge to replacing it has resulted in increased cost. Haven't been able to reconstruct the whole history, but it looks like the original rehabilitation maybe was estimated at $220,000, and that the replacement was at maybe $750,000. SHPO is going to provide $500,000, and the final record shows some discussion about the possibility of other sources of funding, like from ESD, that might have made it such that there wasn't going to be a local share.
And ESD fell through.
Correct. So those other funding sources, to what extent they were anticipated or hoped for, never materialized. It's the way it looks.
If I could just comment, at the public information meeting of September 17th, 2015, the total construction cost was $2,245,000. In that was the Jerky Street Bridge for $855,000, and the Saranac Street Bridge of $950,000, $440,000 for roadway improvements, and that got us to a total construction cost of $2,245,000. So in 2015, both bridges, is that those? That's not the price of replacing these bridges.
What date was that?
September 17th, 2015.
September was a month before the next. May of 15.
We'd have to take a lot closer look at the records to say.
And also, in April, there was the capital plan of $1,870,000. At that time, did not include $500,000 from the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, Historical Preservation. The revised cost of $500,000, that's costing us $500,000, or should have that been a reduction of $500,000? Because that was added, then we went to $2,370,000. I would think $500,000, we had to pay them that, because that's reflecting as an additional cost, where I would think it would be a reduction.
I don't know what you're reviewing. I don't recall that.
It was
Like
a
I
town
said, the
council
capital
meeting.
project that was established started with $374,000 as a city share and was increased to $574,000 as a city share. And, you know, the additional cost to the project was increased when that local share was increased as well.
But $500,000 from the Office of Parks, that wouldn't be an expense, would it? Because that upped the project, $500,000. I would have thought it would have dropped to $500,000.
When we say that we have a revenue element coming in on a project, that's the
Right.
funding source. So that would change the other funding sources. Why that $500,000 will be added to the total cost, I don't get it either.
Because it's not, it shows federal funding of $1,496,000, and our general fund cost at that time was $374,000. But the $500,000 was added to those two figures.
And I think the total project cost went up at that same time?
Yes, it did. No. Well, it's just showing that it went up $500,000 because of that $500,000.
And I think that's where the city share went up by $200,000. So the scope of the project was increased for some reason at that point in time, which I don't know about. So, but I mean, one of the comments that was made before was that this was all going to be totally free to the city. There was always a city's funding share, matching share with this project from the start.
Right.
And it's grown to 574 in the capital projects that we have, and now it's an additional 470 being requested to cover the total anticipated cost.
We passed the resolution of $374,000.
And I think you also passed the resolution, the capital project resolution, to change it to 574 for the city share.
It went with the capital expenditure, or it went into the capital expenditure.
Right.
We amended that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we revised those each time the engineering office was issuing a change to the project. And, you know, that goes through our office and is presented to you for approval. And, you know, I think it's been revised 3 times, that capital project?
At least.
Okay.
Yep. So would there be more information available at a later date?
I think we've raised enough doubt here in the last 5 minutes of discussion to suggest that maybe we need to do more homework.
I think we do.
I think that I would ask John Ruff if perhaps it might be good to run this project by a third party to see if they agree on all the figures. If that's something we can afford.
We asked for a budget verification from Stantec and they provided one.
Stantec has provided a budget verification for the current figures.
Yes, it didn't include the 200 for the demolition,
500,000 of that. It's about 1.075 with their numbers, but some things have slightly changed down to 1.043. That is our local.
What would be the harm in waiting till the next infrastructure meeting to discuss this in more detail? Would there be any liability in doing that?
I don't know with the grant funding agency. SHPO is anxious to get this resolved, but then it becomes a construction schedule issue at some point in time.
Well, maybe we can just. Would it also impact the cost? Any further delay?
It's hard to say. Now's over the next 2 or 3 months is a good time here to be putting things out to bid because contractors are looking for their big jobs for the construction season. So the later you bid in the year, typically prices aren't as aggressive. Although if you have a contractor that doesn't have work lined up, you could get a very aggressive cost. So that's hard to say. As far as getting a third-party review, we could do that. We'd have to pay for it, but what we're going to end up with really is just a second opinion on what somebody thinks the project may or may not cost.
Sounds like you've already done that.
Yes, I don't know that we're going to get any value out of that.
Okay.
So I think it really goes back to the philosophical question of do we want to potentially be on the hook for 470 plus or minus additional and reap the benefits of phases 2 and 3, or do we just want to call it quits and absorb the consequences of doing that?
When is the next infrastructure committee meeting?
I don't know, I haven't seen this schedule.
Next Thursday.
It's next Thursday.
Next Thursday.
Second Thursday.
Do you think you could uncover some more possible liabilities between now and next Thursday if you had an additional week, or
No.
you don't think so?
I'm not saying there might not be value in just mulling over everything you've heard tonight for another week. I don't think that's going to bring the project to a crashing halt. But I don't know of any additional information that's going to materially affect the really tough decision that we have to make. So, sorry.
I know some of us are eager to vote on this and get it underway, and others are a little reluctant. What would your feelings be about waiting a week?
I would abstain at this point because I don't feel I have enough information.
Yeah, I think there's advantage to an extra week to digest. I mean, I actually feel as though philosophically, I know which side of the question I will weigh in on, but I'm not opposed to more discussion and an opportunity to look carefully at the numbers.
I agree with you, Michelle. I don't see any harm in an additional week to get more information. And I guess from my standpoint, to kind of clear my head and think things through, there's an awful lot of information presented tonight that I think we need to wade through.
I'd like to make a motion to table the resolution.
Well, we have a motion.
No, took it off.
Took it off the table.
We're gonna
That's right.
replace it.
But did we vote on taking it off the table?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, on table.
I'd like to second Josh's.
Trustee, second by Councilor Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves the third annual Discover Plattsburgh Irish Festival to be held on March 10th, 2018. The festival will use a portion of the Durkee Street parking lot beginning Thursday, March 8th, 2018. The request is to utilize rows directly in front of the Farmers Market building. Alcohol will be served and is permitted by the council per section 129-4 of the code, and accordingly, New York State Liquor Authority permit compliance and documentation is required.
Moved by Councilor Kretzer and seconded by Councilor Kelly. Discussion.
I guess I would just like to have the question answered that was asked before. Is there any expense to the city for this, or is it actually possibly a revenue generator for the city?
Well, I don't believe it will be a revenue generator for us, but no city events are gonna be costing the city any dollars because, due to generous sponsors from our community, we were able to, fund all events for the year, so.
Thank you.
Great job, Sandra.
Sandra.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves Adirondack Coast Events and Fleet Feet to hold the Shamrock Shuffle 5K, which will start and finish at Durkee Street on March 17th, with race beneficiary to be Foundation of CBPH.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, second by Councilor Fletcher. Discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves that the mayor is authorized to sign a contract and related documents with Ford Payment Systems, Inc. to provide payment processing and related services, including but not limited to automated clearinghouse, credit and debit card for processing payments or fees collected in the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Dowdle, second by Councilor Armstrong. Discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves the 4 written policies and standards for appeal as authorized by Chapter 233, Article 5, Sections 233-36E and F, and Sections 233-37C and D, respectively, the entire text of which has been distributed to and read by the members of the Common Council are hereby enacted without the reading thereof, and a copy of said 4 written policies and standards for appeal are made a part of the minutes in this meeting.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, second by Councilor Dowdle. Discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
I'd like to hand down appointment to Patrick McFarland to the planning board for a 5-year term beginning on February 2nd, 2018, expiring February 3rd, 2023. Roll call, please.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
There's no travel request at this time. Are there any resolutions for initial consideration? Seeing none, any new business or council reports?
I actually have to, I was contacted by an official from the Plattsburgh Little League, and with the city lights, with the new lights in Penfield Park, they need from Musco a certificate of insurance, and I believe that, Richard, you'd be able to provide that? Or is it Sylvia?
You have to give me the details on it, what we're actually saying we're covering,
Okay.
what the city's exposure is. If you wouldn't mind sending that to me, I'll.
Okay, I do not have that information. I was just asked if the city could provide a certificate of insurance, and because it is, the lights are on city property, and Musco requires that. So I don't know those details, but I can certainly find out for you.
Yeah, if you give me someone to talk to. Okay?
Sure. Absolutely.
Good.
Thank you. Actually, I have another issue, and I shouldn't say issue, but question. And it comes to mind after we agreed to have the mayor sign an agreement or a contract with the company for the city clerk. I know in the past, Councilor Kretzer has recused himself from voting on issues, and I think all of us being involved within the city, we find ourselves on boards and so on, and occasionally we may have to recuse ourselves. And I know that we approve contracts as a board, and I guess my question is, do we have any sort of policy in place, or is there something, who would, I guess, sign the contract? Would it be the city clerk? Would it be the city chamberlain in the event that there is a contract that comes up that we approve that may have a conflict of interest.
I think the answer would be the mayor, are you assuming the mayor had a conflict of interest?
Right, well, the mayor.
So that would be presumed as a vacancy, for that specific instance, and then the mayor pro tem would like.
Okay, so that I would be,
I could look into it more.
or whoever is the pro tem at the time. I'm just wondering if there was an existing policy or what the.
It's not so much as a policy, just reviewing the charter, as applying the charter to that instance.
Okay.
But I can look into it further.
Just
If it comes up, or when it comes up.
Who knows if it'll come up, but in case it does. Thank you.
That's a good point. I know we should always be mindful of the things that you vote on. Typically, I wouldn't vote, but be always mindful of which boards you're on. I know Councilor Fetzer consistently recuses himself when he knows there's going to be a conflict. We do need to be very aware. We certainly want councilors very involved in the community, so these things do come up from time to time.
I was going to say, I guess along those lines, do we have any more information on possible ethics board that we spoke about?
Councilor Casper thought this was a good idea. I certainly endorsed it as well. If you would like to form, I would recommend perhaps through the governance committee to form some sort of ethics board and include external members from the community.
We discussed it informally, but certainly that can be brought up.
If I could back up, I do have a question, and I know we got a little time crunch in the beginning. The weekly expenditure analysis, we spent $5,720 to take a tree down at 22 Club Road. Now, where is that? Does anybody know? It came out of the Parks and Beautification. Is that to the left of the gym, 22 Club Road?
As you go in, the base from Hamilton Street, it was on the right-hand side of the road, it was a very large tree.
Massive.
Just very nice.
The V road.
Because I noticed that we've taken this past summer trees down in front of that apartment complex. There's always a question as to whose property that was. So that's been established, that city's property.
It was on the city's right of way.
So there are cars that park horizontal facing that apartment house. So are they parking on city property? Because there's like cement pads that are left there. And I've also noticed the recreation department has a large motorhome parked in our parking lot. And several cars parked there because there's quite a crunch for parking some nights at the rec. I assume the city doesn't own a large motorhome. But it's there, it's parked there all winter. So I don't know what would stop other city residents. We had an issue of boats being parked on our marina property. Now we've got a motorhome, and I think several cars consistently parked there that use the apartment complex. Although there is parking provided, it may be a shorter walk. And some of the cars where those trees were moved, now that we know it's city property, are parking, so they back out into the traffic, but apparently using city property to park closer to their front door. And I'm wondering if that could be addressed. Since it was a little questionable as to whose property it was, but clearly now, since we're taking the trees down, it's ours.
Well, this tree was
Right, this particular,
way back
but other
from
ones that we took
the
down
oval parking
this
lot.
past summer,
Yeah.
next to the gym, were considerable.
Oh, okay.
Well, we'll look into it, okay?
Yeah, it looks like it's kind of free-for-all parking. We have, everybody wanted to put their motorhomes rather than make it their storage.
Maybe some signage, we'll look at it.
But we did budget for the cost for that tree removal last year.
Yeah.
It's a 2017 expenditure. And this tree's been really,
Just made me think of that other
Yep.
situation. Thank you.
that was a big tree.
Yes,
It's
it
ready to
was.
come down.
A lot of circles to count. All right.
Any other councilor reports or new business? Seeing none, this is now the time for public comment. Please, anybody who'd like to address the council on any other mutual concern. If you do, as I said, share a common concern, we ask for a representative to come and speak on your behalf. And we've got 5 minutes time limit. Report. last year, the co-op completed a $550,000 renovation project, supplemented by city and state grants and loans, so that we may continue to serve our community to the best of our ability. At our current location on Bridge Street, we rely heavily upon the proximity of adequate parking, currently being supplied by the Durkee Street lot. Our parking needs are uniquely and vitally important to the survival and success of the co-op, which is downtown's only full-service grocery store. With these thoughts in mind, I would like to present this petition to you, the political leaders of the city. As the downtown revitalization initiative moves forward, with special regard to the Durkee Street lot development, the co-op requests that our parking needs are kept in mind. This petition states that the co-op requires 20 spaces nearby the business to facilitate the ease of access for our customers. We represent the approximately 2,500 like-minded, concerned co-op member owners, shoppers, and citizens who have signed this petition, joined together to assure the survival and success of the North Country Food Co-op, in addition to other businesses in our immediate area. Thank you very much for your time and attention to the important matter.
Thank you.
Thanks for this too.
Any other individuals, please come and address the council.
Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Kritzer. I'm an independent teaching artist, community organizer, and progressive educator. I'm also a small business owner, and I'm a homeowner as of last April. I moved here with my girlfriend 3.5 years ago for her job. She's a dentist. And since then, I've built a program called the Plattsburgh Art Detectives that uses the arts to help community members of all ages and abilities achieve life goals. Some of my students are here tonight. At this point, I work weekly with about 30 students, offering programming in everything from photography and filmmaking to journalism and food justice. I recently brought on 2 independent contractors to work with me who offer yoga and cooking, respectively. My program is entirely grown by word of mouth out of a community need, and I meet with prospective new students weekly. At this point, I've had to start a waiting list. Needless to say, there is a tremendous need for meaningful programming like this in our community. After the library refused to allow my program any space, the food co-op actually stepped in and offered their upstairs community room as an alternative. I checked out several vacant storefronts in the downtown corridor, as there's no shortage of spaces to rent. But ultimately, I made the decision to work with the co-op, and I'm very glad that I did. Their upstairs community room has become the home of the Plattsburgh Art Detectives, and has been invaluable in so many ways to the evolution of my program and its ability to offer cutting-edge arts integration curricula that would not otherwise be available to a broad and underserved population of our community. The proposed Durkee Street development would be harmful to several downtown businesses, the co-op, and the art detectives among them. And you, our elected leadership, are not properly taking into account how far-reaching and destructive the implications of moving forward with this development would be against the wishes of the lifeblood of Plattsburgh's prospective future. Young people do not want to live in a place that has no interest in supporting them. The way you all have approached this development, the way you all talk about it and write off opposition to it, the dangerous notion of investing in technology and developments and not in people, I find it all to be incredibly discouraging and disingenuous, not to mention dangerous. This is not the first time I felt unsupported in my work in Plattsburgh, and unfortunately will not be the last. And many of my neighbors are here tonight because they feel the exact same way. Plattsburgh has a pattern, and it's an alienating and unacceptable pattern that must be broken. Should the Durkee Street development go through without adequately addressing and working with members of the community in a real and meaningful way, then I will boycott the development and do everything in my power to ensure that my fellow community members boycott it as well. We will not shop there, rent there, or even park there. It will be a ghost town, much like the Gateway, except the Gateway didn't even need a boycott to stay hollowed out. Furthermore, if you push this terrible plan forward against the wishes of the community, I believe it will be the nail in the coffin and will encourage people like my girlfriend and me and several others in this room to get out of here and move to a place that's supportive of progressive work and values and wants to collaborate with the community to build a future that benefits everybody. It's ultimately your choice, and I will do everything in my power to work with you to make the right choice. Thank you so much for your time.
Any other individuals, please come address the council.
Well, I was gonna make some comments on progress towards next year's budget, but I was so heartened tonight to see some of the counselors, looking at how much things are gonna cost. Like, a lot of times, I see the council vote on things, and it's, where's the money gonna come from? Figure that out later. But when you look at it, like, you know, there's only so much money in the city budget. If you're gonna spend additional monies on something, you're gonna have to, and I thought it was great analogy. Yeah, there's two jobs, okay? When you start looking at the budget like that, you start realizing what spending extra money is gonna mean. I really hope that this year's budget will turn out under the tax cap, and I think it can, and I think it will, but, you know, I'm just really glad that people are starting to finally look at where's the money gonna come from. You know, I see, this is the first time I've come here to a meeting and said, gee, you know, somebody's looking at what this is gonna cost. It's not that it's not worthy or anything isn't worthy, but where is the money gonna come from? And I'm glad people are starting to think, like, where is that money gonna come from? Great. Good. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Jeremiah from Strong Towns, Plattsburgh. I want to speak to some points that the mayor made to WAMC in response to our first group meeting a week ago. The mayor and his supporters on the council say the Durkee Street plans have evolved over the past 2 years and that we, the public, are responding to a 2-year-old concept that is obsolete. Isn't that more of a testament to the lack of public engagement and buy-in throughout the ongoing DRI process than anything? Where can we, the public, see the latest developments and plans that have evolved over the last 2 years? I think we'd all like to know, as we're all rather confused, especially since, in a press release a few weeks ago, the mayor said that the complete rearrangement of parking downtown was mandated by the DRI proposal the state approved almost 2 years ago. I'd like to remind the mayor that when he was a candidate not too long ago, he said about the DRI that if we want all this to succeed, we need public buy-in. Those are strong words, and our entire group completely agrees with them. In fact, if the mayor really is wanting to develop along Strong Towns lines like he told WAMC last week, then the city would be developing in a way that is driven by a bottom-up approach rather than top-down politics. This is the fundamental principle of the Strong Towns movement. Lastly, I'm glad that the mayor doesn't want to see a monolithic big box mall-like thing at the Durkee Street lot. But the mayor didn't just run against the downtown mall. He ran against the absurdity of spending so much DRI funding propping up a large-scale mixed-use development when there are so many existing buildings downtown that are deteriorating and underutilized. This really seems like a 180 to me. The mayor now wants a big fancy new building or buildings on the Durkee Street lot, even though when he campaigned he said, quote, if our foundations are crumbling, it doesn't make an awful lot of sense to build a mansion on it. We need honesty, open communication, public buy-in if we are truly going to make our city a strong city. It shouldn't be up to the public or our group to prove a negative that the Durkee Street project is unpopular, although we will if we need to. It should be up to the city to prove a positive, that the Durkee Street project is actually wanted by the public. And I haven't seen any proof of that in the last 3 years. Thank you.
Any other individuals, please come up and address the council.
I think it's important, I think you've heard tonight as I am, regarding the Saranac and Durkee Bridge and Public Works project. I think this would be the start of a new lead for the city in that for the infrastructure meeting next Thursday, that I, as a resident, would ask the ability to, along with the councilors, to review the phases along with pictorials and detailed budget line items, and to then generate maybe some comment and feedback as to how we could generate some matching funds. It is a long-term project, so it's not going to happen, tomorrow. And I think that I'm hoping it goes forward, to look at generating some income and how we can get those dollars. Regarding the Durkee Street project, I, as somebody that lives downtown, feel that, since 1950s, we've been working on trying to redevelop that parking lot in that area that used to house some old warehouse buildings. I agree with Jeremiah and some of the other people that have spoken in that we have a lot of physical resources downtown that I think in the original phases, we talked about incorporating the storefronts and the owners of the properties that have buildings downtown into the downtown redevelopment project, in that we would be attracting residents to live in the city parking lot that would be constructed. And yes, there would be some multi-use, but that wouldn't be the primary site of storefronts and retail space and other uses of that type. But that would be the spot to actually have residents and tenants and people that would bring dollars into downtown, that would shop downtown, use the co-op and other, existing restaurants, et cetera. So I think I agree that as a resident, I don't know where it's at now. I would like to see some of the current plans, and I know we have a lot of work to do yet. I know that Paul DiDomenico has been working hard with residents and other people to try to create a multi-phase, multifaceted parking. And I spoke to Paul in detail about the area across from the co-op that was created and converted to green space, and why wasn't it converted to parking. And I think the concern at the time was that they weren't sure, how much it would cost to get the sub-base and everything. But from what I understand, and I leave this to the council, that there's still some dollars left from the grant that you received to redevelop that site. And I think that would be a perfect site to have for additional parking. I want to make a note that there's no assigned parking for the co-op or restaurants or businesses that are downtown now, but that people frequent it, they come and go, and that might be a good spot to have a means of egress around the back of the parking that's adjacent to the Durkee Street lot. I also, just quickly, I thought that it would make sense that whoever develops the downtown parking lot, that the city encourage them to create underground parking, and that in exchange to some kind of funding, that we would be guaranteed a certain number of spots. I think that the Bridge Street parking lot that I know the Bridge Street auction uses now, I think is ideal for a parking garage. And I think that the area that's now used for a dog park on Margaret Street, between the Bagel Pit and the other complex, would also be ideal to have maybe some multi-level parking. But the other thing that I think is important is that the city look at existing parking. So the building that was built on I guess it would be the south end where Broad and Durkee intersect, they have 2 levels of parking or 3 levels of parking. I asked Paul Domenico to look and see if it's structurally sound to add on maybe a couple layers, and that the city look at how we can partner with other existing developers and owners to create a citywide parking for everybody that is going to live in the city of downtown, come and shop in the city, and also for existing shopping. I asked the city to look into that. Thank you very much.
Any other individuals, please come forward.
So I'm also here to speak about the DRI grant and how it's kind of gotten to this place. My name is Danielle. I'm a resident here in Plattsburgh, a homeowner and a landlord as well. We don't live right downtown, but we live in the flats, pretty close, so walkable in the summer, not so much in the winter. I think, I also teach dance at the dance studio in the West Elkhorn building, so I use it for that as well. While I do think there's a lot to be said for the idea of creating a better city block at the Durkee Street site, I believe that the vision should be achieved in smaller, more sustainable increments over time, not with one massive building project with one single outside developer. These types of projects have a high rate of failure and pose risk of crushing local business that have already started to develop in the last 10 years. Even in the last 5 years, there's a lot more diversity in the businesses that are downtown compared to, I moved back after being gone for 10 years. When I left, there was nothing. There was a few bars, and that was it. However, I personally don't believe that the strategy adopted by the DRI grant for the Durfee Street lot is a good idea. While I don't believe the strategy is a good idea, my bigger concern really is how we got here in the first place. My concern lies in the fact that despite the claim that the DRI committee has taken public opinion into account, there seems to be little proof of that. I know that there has been public, sessions where the public input has been, requested, but nothing was printed in the report to the state, no results. Nobody has seen any polling results, what the numbers were officially. Although we know from people who have been there that the one time that the public was asked to come and vote on the different projects, there were 50 people showed up, and each were given 6 to 8 docs to put next to the different projects. And the Durfee Street received 5 out of 144 responses. 5, and that is what we know is the public opinion of this project. That is what we know so far. But yet, and there were many other projects on the list, much more popular, okay, and especially the mitigation of the sewage treatment plant, which is one of the things that the mayor ran on the platform that you ran on, included that project, which would help us to leverage the already empty parking lot that is there, right? So we currently have a parking lot that is not being used the way it should be. I don't believe that 5 votes out of 144 shows moderate support as stated, which was originally stated as strong support from the community in the report to the state. That to me is a flat out lie. Okay? So that seems like a cover-up. Okay? It seems like for some reason the committee wants this project to go through and the people don't. Okay? And I know that there was comments about rejecting grants and things like that and what the implications and ramifications of that would be. I agree with that, but I also think that the responsibility there's even more responsibility on the committee to really respect the opinion of the public. Because if you don't, there's going to be blowback, and you run the risk of having strong resentment and people not even wanting this grant at all. There are people who are threatening to boycott the building, threatening to leave the city, and I am one of them. Okay? Because this is a grave insult, in my opinion. So, I would like to just add that, when we look at who is on the committee, it's really, it's an elite club. Okay? We have, John Edling, which I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but president of SUNY Plattsburgh, Colin Reed, Amy Bond, owner of Finch Network Consulting, Rodney Brown, director of planning, Clinton County Planning Department, Michael Cashman, supervisor, town of Plattsburgh, Victoria Dooley, economic development, the Development Corporation, Neil Fassett, broker and owner, Fassett Realty, Paul Grasso, REDC representative, president and CEO of the Development Corporation, Caitlin Einhoff, president, Downtown Business Association, Christy Kennedy, vice president for marketing, North Country Chamber of Commerce, Kim Mannion, owner, Adirondack Mall Realty, Harry McManus, chairman, Clinton County Legislature, David Merkel, owner, Ruger Self-Storage, Terry Miron, principal, Miron Properties, Lee Mundy, chair, Strand Theater, Sam Porofsky, owner of Ashley's Furniture, John Seaton, principal, J.S. Seaton Real Estate and Commercial Development, Keith Tyo, assistant to the president of SUNY Plattsburgh, and Jeremiah Ward, thank God, because we wouldn't know any of this otherwise.
Counselor Kelly?
Yeah.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Pencil?
Yes.
Counselor Casper? Yes. Counselor Cretzer?
Yes. What is it?